The corridors of Aurelis Prime thrummed with soft blue light, its crystalline walls humming faintly with psychic resonance. Above, the sky wasn't sky at all, but the endless swirl of the gas giant that loomed below sapphire clouds in slow, hypnotic motion. The academy floated like a ring of perfection in a sea of void, a monument to intellect and psychic purity. Every species that mattered sent their brightest here. Every mind that burned hot enough to be shaped, sharpened, and refined passed through these halls. All except hers. Sira walked in silence, her bare feet making no sound on the lumiglass floors. No one looked at her. Not truly. They saw her, registered her presence, and then dismissed it, like one might dismiss static in a signal. A glitch in the data stream. She had stopped expecting acknowledgement years ago. Pairs of students floated between elevated platforms, bonded, synchronized, glowing faintly with shared psychic rhythm. Some drifted side by side, not speaking, simply breathing in tandem, their minds interlocked like ivy grown around a shared root. Others practiced group recall, exchanging thoughts and memories in elegant streams of light between their temples. There were no voices, no words, no need. The bond was everything. Sira watched from the shadows near the observatory ramp, her thin frame wrapped in the standard academy tunic, one sleeve pinned across her chest where her left arm should have been. The limb had never formed, just like the neural anchor in her cortex, the part of every Talari that allowed them to broadcast and receive thought streams. In their society, both were vital, necessary. Without them, you were. Lestat, she was a living reminder that evolution sometimes made mistakes. Her right hand twitched slightly, an old habit from when she used to try reaching out. She didn't anymore. It never worked. Her signal was a whisper in a storm too faint to catch, too broken to answer. Instead, she watched the others from a distance. Always from a distance. Whispers passed her, not words but thoughts, brushing by her like wind against a window. She couldn't hear them, not truly, but she had learned to feel them. The flicker of attention, the buzz of judgment, the occasional jab of pity, quickly masked dot, then the intercom pinged, a rare occurrence. A voice followed, neutral and cold. Pairing announcement. Bonding trial. Cycle 3.12 begins at dawn. Trial candidate. Sira, unpaired, assigned partner. Walker Ronan. Species, human. Silence followed. Then came the ripples. Sira's name had never been called for a trial. Not seriously. A few times as a joke, when instructors needed a demonstration of failure, but never in earnest. She blinked, uncertain she'd heard it right, but the students had. And now, all around her, the murmurs began, this time spoken. Because she was deaf to their thoughts, and therefore not worth the energy. They're letting her try again? She lasted 12 seconds last time. I heard they pulled a human, not even a bonded species. This is going to be hilarious. Laughter bloomed in corners, subtle and cruel. Even the instructors didn't bother to intervene. Sira didn't. Flinch. She turned and walked away, her pace even, expression blank. But inside, something shifted. Ronan Walker. Human. She had never met one. Never seen one. Even no one wanted her. And yet something was being sent to stand beside her. Not because he chose to, because he was the only one left. The bonding chamber was quiet when Sira entered, its arched walls radiating pale gold from embedded pulse stones. Unlike the rest of Aurelis Prime, where everything shimmered with flowing life thoughts in motion, voices without sound, this place was still, empty, isolated, designed for focus. For psychic unity, Sira stood in the center, alone. She always was. The air here felt heavier, thicker, like it was expecting something she couldn't give. She tried not to look at the walls too long, each one etched with swirling glyphs of past. Successes. Pairs who had emerged bonded in perfect harmony. Their names now engraved in Talari script, forever remembered. Her name would never be there. She adjusted her pinned sleeve. The fabric was stiff, uncomfortable. A reminder. But she wouldn't remove it. She needed that discomfort. It kept her sharp, honest, aware of what she was and what she wasn't. Hiss of decompression echoed from the side corridor. Sira turned. He didn't enter so much as wander in. Hair messy, collar uneven, a black strap across his back holding a small toolkit that clanked faintly as he walked. He stopped 2 steps inside the chamber, looked around like he'd just stumbled into a museum he wasn't sure he was allowed to be in, and he spotted her. Sira stiffened. He smiled. "Hey," he said, voice rough, casual. "So you must be?" The one everyone's terrified of bonding with. Sira blinked, thrown off by the sound of his voice. It was too loud. Not just in volume, but in presence. It cut through the chamber's silence like a knife. I'm Ronan. Walker. Just Ronan's fine, though. Full names feel like job interviews. She stared. Didn't reply. He frowned. Do you not speak? Sira shook her head, slowly. Then quietly, I do. Oh, thank God, he exhaled, dropping his bag to the floor. I've been wondering. Around this place for 2 days, and no one said a single word. Thought maybe my translator was broken. Sira didn't know what to say. No one had spoken to her voluntarily in years. And now here was a human unbonded, unsensed talking like this was normal. She looked down. You know this won't work. Great pep talk, Ronan said, stretching his arms. But I figured that out when your fancy computer voice said. We had 0 neural compatibility. Then why are you here? Ronan shrugged. Because someone told me I couldn't do it. And I have a bit of a problem with authority. He looked around, then tapped the glowing floor with his boot. So, how does this bonding thing work? We sit in the light, meditate, and then what? Our souls merge into eternal psychic harmony? Sira blinked. That's not exactly wrong. He grinned. Nice, I read the brochure. A soft chime echoed through the room. The bonding chamber's inner circle lit up, casting gold light between them. A pulsing rhythmic hum began to build. Like a distant heartbeat. It was time. Sira stepped into the light, alone. She'd done this before. It always ended the same. She didn't expect him to follow, but he did. Ronan stepped forward, not cautiously, not CEREMONILLY - just walked, like he didn't care about the tradition or the history, like he only cared that she was standing. There alone. The system scanned them. Glyphs shimmered in the air. Neural sync, 0%. Signal resonance, incompatible. Telepathic merge, failed. A cold female voice rang out above them. Bond attempt unsuccessful. Psychic integration not viable. There it was, the confirmation. The same outcome as every time. Sira turned to leave, but Ronan reached out gently and touched her hand. It wasn't bonding. It wasn't psychic. It was just warm, human skin against hers. And for the first time, Sira didn't flinch. I know we're supposed to connect with our minds, he said softly. But maybe we can start with just being here. Sira stared at their hands. 4. Once, it didn't feel like failure. It felt like something else. Something unmeasured, unquantified, real. And somewhere behind the mirrored walls of the bonding chamber, someone was watching, recording, whispering through thought streams. Because no one was supposed to stand beside her. But now, someone had. The illusion beast was enormous, 20 feet tall, its body composed of shifting shadow and fractal geometry that twisted the light around it. Horns like warped satellite dishes rotated from its head, scanning the chamber in sweeping arcs. It didn't breathe. It didn't snarl. It simply existed, pulsing with energy drawn from the neural fields around it, and it was watching them. Sira stood at the edge of the trial arena, her hand clenching unconsciously at the edge of her tunic. The chamber dome above shimmered with protective fields, though she'd seen them fail before. The beast was a psychic construct used to test bond pairs in unity, reaction, harmony. It adapted to threat responses, hunting emotional imbalances like blood and water. She had faced it once. It hadn't even needed to attack. Her partner that day assigned against his will had simply collapsed when the bond failed. The simulation ended in 13 seconds. Now she stood next to Ronan. He stared up at the beast, chewing the inside of his cheek. So, does it die if we unplug it? Or is this one of those face your trauma kind of deals? Sira's voice was thin. It reflects internal instability. It pushes hard, right? Ronan flexed his fingers. So like a telepathic therapy bear. Fantastic. The timer on the sidewall began to count down from 30. Sira inhaled once, steadying herself. Don't try to bond, she said quickly. The feedback could fracture your cortex. Oh, I'm not trying anything fancy. I'm just trying not to pee my suit. She blinked at him. He was serious, and not serious. And somehow, the tightness in her chest eased slightly. Then the countdown hit 0. The beast moved. It didn't lunge. It didn't roar. It simply appeared closer, like reality had skipped a frame. One moment it was across the room. The next, it was 3 meters away. The space between seemed to fold, warp. Sira froze. She couldn't keep up. She knew this. Her mind didn't sync fast enough. She'd never move left. Ronan shouted and shoved her. She stumbled, but the beast's tail slammed down where she had just been. The tremor cracked through the chamber floor. You okay? He called out, already moving. Sira looked at him, really looked. He wasn't elegant. He wasn't coordinated. His movements were too reactive, too human. No predictive logic. No psychic foresight. Just instinct. But he moved. And when he moved, he pulled her with him. They circled the beast. It struck again, this time toward Ronan. He rolled sideways, grabbed a loose support rod from the ground, and hurled it at the simulation's head. The rod passed through the illusion, but the construct paused, recalibrating. Sira blinked. That shouldn't have. It thought it was real. Ronan grinned. Illusions are funny like that. She ran toward him, heart hammering. The psychic pulses from the beast battered her thoughts like static. She couldn't connect, but she could feel the pressure building. It was feeding on her dissonance. You need to stay calm, she said, gripping his wrist. I am calm, Ronan replied, grinning like he wasn't covered in sweat. You're the one shaking. I've failed this trial every time. He looked at her, then really looked. Not this time. Another ripple. The beast's body elongated, forming tendrils, probing. They had to move together, but there was no bond. No mental link, only a shared decision. Sira narrowed her eyes. Follow my steps. Match me physically. Like a dance? She nodded. He sighed. I hate dancing. Now. They moved not as one mind, but as two bodies trying desperately to stay close. When she stepped, he mirrored. When she ducked, he turned. It was clumsy, jarring, but slowly it began to work. The beast began to slow. Confused, not it couldn't read them. They weren't bonded, but they weren't unstable either. Their rhythm was chaotic, but harmonious in its own strange way. It couldn't adapt. Then Sira saw the opening. Now, she shouted. Ronan flung a gravity spike used for anchoring training gear into the creature's core. The simulation absorbed it, shimmered, pulsed, and dissolved. The arena dimmed. Silence returned. Above them, the judge's booth remained. Quiet. For the first time, perhaps ever, no one knew what to say. No bond. No telepathic link. No success, according to their rules. And yet, they had endured. The timer froze at 3 minutes, 12 seconds, longer than any pair had survived without sinking. Sira stood in stunned silence, chest rising and falling. Ronan wiped his brow with his sleeve. "Well," he muttered, "that was horrifying." She looked at him, not blinking. "You didn't run," she said. "Was I supposed to? No one ever stayed." He shrugged. "I'm not everyone." Somewhere behind the mirrored observation wall, a new set of whispers began, low, sharp, and frightened, because this wasn't supposed to be possible. And yet it was. The next morning, the corridor outside Sira's dorm felt different. Colder. Quieter. Arel. His prime was always quiet, at least to her, but this was silence with intent. The kind that crouched in corners, watched through mirrored glass, waiting for a reason to bite. She could feel it now, in the way the students passed her with a little more tension in their stride, in the flick of their eyes that never met hers, but hovered, just near enough to slice. She opened her dorm's HOLO-lock. Access. Denied. Sira froze. She tried again. Pressed her palm to the scanner, slower this time. Access denied. A red line blinked over the console. Unauthorized genetic signature. But that was her room. Her home. If you could call 4 walls and silence a home. A tremor touched her chest. She didn't let it rise. Instead, she turned and walked down the hall. Each step echoed louder than it should have. Not because her feet were heavy, but because the others had gone still. Watching. She reached the training terminal, the one she always used in isolation, half hidden behind a maintenance lift. She pressed the interface. Authorization revoked. Another message, curt and silent. This student is no longer assigned to a combat discipline. No explanation. No appeal. Sira stared at the floating text until it blurred. She didn't cry. Not here. Not where they wanted her broken. Then came the sound of boots on tile. Ronan. He strolled toward her with that sane, easy gait, half smiling like they weren't in the middle of a slow, calculated execution. His jacket hung unevenly, one sleeve, patched with adhesive foam. His left hand held a breakfast ration, which he offered without a word. Sira didn't take it. "They locked you out," he said, mouth full. She didn't answer. Ronan sighed and leaned against the terminal. "Saw your name pulled from the combat rosters. Yours and mine." Her eyes lifted sharply. "Yours?" He nodded, unbothered. "Guess my reward for not dying yesterday was getting kicked out of all my engineering programs. Even my tools are gone. Hope nobody needs a coffee machine fixed anytime soon." Sira clenched her good hand. "This is retaliation. Yep. They'll keep pushing, stripping pieces away." "Let them," he said. Her breath hitched. "You don't understand." "Yes, I do," Ronan cut in, quiet now. "I do, Sira. You think you're the only one they want to erase?" She blinked at him. He looked away, ran a hand through his tangled hair. "I come from a station where, if you didn't meet quota, they didn't feed you. They'd lock the vents to your quarters until oxygen dropped below breathable. Slowly, quietly." She said nothing. "So yeah, I know what slow erasure looks like." His eyes met hers again. "But you're still standing. And that scares the hell out of them." A strange weight pressed against her ribs. Not pain, not exactly. Something older, warmer, dangerous. Hope. You should sit with someone else. She whispered, "Why? They won't stop with me." "But they could still let you walk away, let you go home." He tilted his head, half smirking. Why would I want to go back to a place that never saw me either? She stared at him. Let me guess, Ronan said. You've already run through every logical path, calculated the safest way for me to survive this mess, and decided the answer is leave you behind. Silence. He grinned. Yeah, you're probably right. Then the grin faded. But here's the thing. I don't leave people behind. Sierra's chest ached like a wound. No one had said that to her before, not her instructors, not her doctors, not even her family, especially. Not them. A door hissed open nearby. 2 elite Telari passed through, robes like flowing glass, faces empty and judging. They didn't look at her, but they looked at Ronan, their gaze sliced like a scalpel. She turned away. This won't stop. Nope, Ronan said easily, but neither will I. And for the first time in years, the silence around Sierra cracked, just a little, enough to let someone in. The archive door wasn't supposed to open for students, especially not her. It was deep beneath Aurelis Prime, hidden behind layers of authority-locked security protocols and unspoken tradition. This was where the Academy stored legacy records, ones that weren't meant to be accessed without a council directive, the ones that could rewrite truths. So when the door hissed open under Ronan's makeshift bypass hacked together from stripped cleaning drones, rewired gate keys, and a stolen fire alarm, Chip Sierra's breath caught in her throat. You're sure no one will trace this? She whispered. Ronan glanced over his shoulder, grinning. Nope, but I'm sure that we'll be gone before they do. The corridor beyond was dim, bathed in the soft purple-blue glow of dormant data conduits. Glyphs pulsed faintly along the wall security. Runes not designed to stop a human who didn't think like the architects who built them. Sierra hesitated. At the threshold, last chance to turn back, she said. I don't do turn back, Ronan replied. Lead the way, Captain Outcast. She didn't smile, but her lips twitched, just a little. They walked in silence through the circular chamber. Stasis scrolls floated along grav tracks, each pulsing with encrypted memory threads, research logs, student assessments, experimental data files. Sierra felt her pulse rising as she approached the central console. Here, she said. She placed her hand against the scan plate. Nothing, of course. She had been revoked, erased, but Ronan stepped beside her, reached into his jacket, and slid out a flickering white data crystal. Lifted this from the console archive assistant's wristpad. I think it piggybacks on high authority access. He plugged it into the console. The system blinked once, then opened. Sierra leaned forward. Search. Sierra, daughter of Kalia. Trial subject full logs. Lines of glowing script unfurled around them like a slow snowfall. Ronan's eyes narrowed. That's a lot of files, Sierra scrolled. The first entry stopped her cold. Subject ID. Sierra. Classification. Null bond variant. Status. Monitored. Experimental. Project purpose. Study of psychic deficiency persistence under environmental reinforcement. Notes. Viable for long-term suppression and emotional isolation analysis. Termination protocol. Auto-trigger upon Phase 3 deviation. Ronan's voice broke the silence. They never accepted you as a student. No, she said quietly. You were a test. Sierra didn't answer. She didn't move. Ronan stepped closer, reading faster now, skimming the logs. They fed you just enough to maintain baseline vitals, placed you in high-rejection communal groups, never assigned you a permanent mentor. That wasn't neglected, was designed failure. I was an equation, she whispered, a variable to watch unravel. And now that you've started bonding with me, you've deviated. His jaw clenched. Phase 3, termination. Protocol. Sierra stared ahead, but her eyes weren't seeing the console anymore. She was remembering the empty rooms, the silence at her birthday, the bonding trials where no one reached out. She'd thought she was forgotten. But no, she was being watched. Ronan turned to her. "We need to go. Now." But she was still staring at the last line of the file. Termination authorization. Approved. Pending signal activation. What signal? She asked. Then the overhead lights turned red. The AI's voice echoed from nowhere and everywhere. Subject deviation confirmed. Cognitive divergence at threshold. Initiating corrective action. Enforcer units en route. Ronan swore and yanked her arm. "Come on." Sierra stumbled after him, her thoughts spiraling, her breath shallow. All this time she had wondered why. She didn't belong. Now she knew. She was never meant to. They burst through the archive doors and back into the hall, alarms beginning to blare behind them. Doors locked, lights pulsed red. She felt it in her chest, not fear. Not yet. Rage. For the first time in her life, Sierra felt her voice rise, not in question or apology, but as command. "They wanted me broken," she said. Ronan glanced at her as they ran. "Then let's break them instead." Chachtit said. They. Hangar loomed ahead like a silent colossus, its curved blast doors pulsing faintly with containment glyphs. The launch bays of Arelis Prime were reserved for Council transports and deep-orbit scouts. No student had ever been permitted near them. Without elite clearance. Sierra was about to steal one. Sirens howled behind them now, the AI's voice cycling through the corridors in precise, patient tones. Security breach. Subject Sierra has deviated. Apprehend. Do not terminate unless sanctioned. Nice of... Then to consider mercy, Ronan muttered as he dragged a makeshift disruptor out of his jacket, hastily assembled from repurposed food tray components and a stolen pulse coil. "Door's gonna be shielded. Give me 10 seconds. Sierra didn't answer. She stood beside him, eyes locked on the glyphs across the steel. Her mind wasn't calm, it boiled. Everything she had ever questioned, ever feared, had twisted into clarity. She was never allowed to succeed. The file hadn't lied. Her existence had been curated, shaped, suppressed. The pain of her silence hadn't been oversight. It had been data. And the only reason she was still breathing was because they hadn't expected someone to stand beside her. No one ever had, until Ronan. He keyed the last connection. The disruptor sparked, flared, and the door's seal buckled. "Go," he breathed. Sierra ran. The hangar was vast, lined with light-class interceptors and glider transports. She spotted the scout ship instantly. Compact, dual-engine, fitted with maneuver thrusters, but no weapon pods. Not built for war, built for escape. She sprinted for it as Ronan slammed the door shut behind them. He slapped the override panel, and the chamber sealed with a shriek of metal. "Lockout engaged. Buy us 60 seconds, he muttered, turning. To run toward the ship only to freeze. Enforcer silhouettes had already entered from the upper gantry. 3 of them. Clad in obsidian armor etched with the emblem of the Council, they moved like machines, no words, no signals, only psychic. Coordination so tight it felt inhuman. Each step fell in perfect unison. Their minds braided together in lethal consensus. "Contact," one whispered not aloud, but into Sierra's skull. The others heard it too. So did Ronan. Even without the bond, the psychic pressure radiated. Like a storm, then they attacked. Ronan didn't hesitate. He dropped low, rolling under the first Enforcer's strike, and hurling a sonic disruptor, a device he shouldn't have had. But of course he did. The blast tore through the gantry edge, sending 2 Enforcers staggering. The third launched directly toward Sierra. She turned, heart slamming against her ribs. He came at her like a bolt of shadow arm outstretched, strike aimed for the base of her neck. She didn't run. She stepped forward, grabbed his arm with her one hand, spun. He overcommitted. The movement sent him crashing into the side of the ship, dazed for a single heartbeat. Ronan shouted, "Sira, fly!" She bolted up the access ramp, punching the control panel. The cockpit flared to life-red lights, emergency warnings, minimal fuel. Didn't matter. Ronan stumbled in just as the last enforcer began recovering. The hatch began to close. One of the enforcer's hands reached forward, clawing at the seam, just as Sira slammed the emergency pressure seal override. The door hissed, then snapped shut, hard enough to make the metal scream. The hand retracted, barely. Ronan dropped into the co-pilot's seat, blood running down his cheek, eyes wide. That ... was way too close. Sira said nothing. Her one hand was already on the flight yoke. "Strap in," she said. He blinked. "Wait, you can fly?" "No," she said. "But I'm angry enough to try." The ship's engines roared. The hangar alarms wailed louder. Docking clamps disengaged. Guidance systems protested. Emergency lockouts screamed warnings. Then the floor dropped beneath them, and the Scout tore through the upper gate, breaching atmosphere, and rocketing out into the void. Aurelis Prime shrank behind them, and 6 pursuit ships launched in perfect formation. Ronan leaned forward, pale. So ... "How fast is this thing?" Sira didn't answer. She pointed. Ahead, space warped the swirling, impossible chasm of fractured light and broken orbit paths. The rift? Ronan's voice cracked. "That's a navigational death zone." "No one follows ships into it," she said calmly. "Yeah," he hissed, "because no one comes out." She looked at him. Her voice was quiet, steady. "They were never going to let us live." He stared at her. Then slowly, he nodded. "All right," he said. "Let's make history." She pushed the thrusters forward. The rift opened its mouth, and they dove in. Behind them, Aurelis Prime hesitated, then vanished. The rift swallowed them whole at once. The stars outside the viewport warped, stretching into long, burning filaments. Reality buckled. The scout ship shuddered violently as it passed the event horizon of the gravitational tear light fractured, and colors twisted into hues that had no names. There was no up, no down. Only pressure, like invisible hands crushing the hull from all sides. Sira gripped the yoke so tightly, her knuckles paled. The controls jerked beneath her. The guidance systems blinked red, then died completely. Stellar. "Nav's gone," Ronan said, trying to stabilize the secondary thrusters. "Gyros are spinning like trunks on anti-grav." "Hold us steady," she snapped. He barked a dry laugh. "We're inside a broken scar of space-time. There is no steady." The ship pitched violently to port, throwing Ronan against the wall. Sparks burst from the upper console. Sira's heart pounded as warning glyphs flickered across every screen life support, weakening. Inertial dampeners at 30%. Hull stress rising behind them. The rift moaned it wasn't sound. Not really. But it felt like a low-frequency vibration. That set her teeth on edge and crawled through her bones. "Can't we punch back out?" Ronan shouted. Sira scanned the rift waves on the failing scope, her bioluminescent skin glowing faintly in rhythm with the gravitational pulses. She wasn't reading the display anymore, She was feeling it, No telepathic bond. No interface, just. The aching resonance in her bones, like the rift was alive, and singing in frequencies her body had always known. "No," she said. "If we try to force an exit now, we'll shear the hull. There's a pattern. It's not chaos. It's a spiral. Collapse." Ronan blinked, stunned. "How do you know that?" Sira didn't answer. Not because she was ignoring him, because she didn't know how she knew. It was just there, in the way her skin tingled when they passed through a dense pocket, in the way her spine burned when the ship veered off course. Her body, her defect, was synchronizing not with minds, but with movement. With energy dot the same way she'd once felt alienated in the telepathic halls of Aurelis. Now in the rift she belonged. Ronan stared at her, eyes widening. Sira, you're navigating it. I think I always could, she whispered. He didn't speak again. He just watched her, breath caught in his throat, as she guided the ship through folds of shattered space with nothing but instinct and the pulse in her veins. They wove between gravity wells like dancers, avoiding falling knives. Time didn't move in minutes here. It bent, turned back on itself, and uncoiled in waves. Eventually, the turbulence subsided. A calm, eerie light filled the cockpit. Outside the viewport, the rift's inner core spiraled around them, a luminous cyclone of orbit fragments, shattered moons, and drifting shipwrecks caught in permanent stasis. Dead ships? Dozens, maybe hundreds. Some ancient, some recent. All of them had entered the rift. None had left. Ronan swallowed. This is a graveyard. Sira nodded. But her focus shifted to the edges of the core, a faint pulse in the far distance. A distortion too regular to be random. There's a seam, she murmured. He leaned forward. A way out? She nodded again. It opens and closes with the current. We time it wrong, we die. Well, he inhaled slowly. Let's not. Alarms flickered one last time. Sira's hand trembled on the yoke. Ronan reached out his, fingers covering hers, not to take control, but to steady her. We do this together, he said. Sira nodded. Her voice was a whisper. No bond, no sync, but we're still here. Together, they pushed the engines. The rift roared, light and distortion peeling away around them as their battered ship surged toward the exit seam. Hull plating screamed. Gravity bent like a sword ready to snap. Every part of the vessel wanted to break. But Sira didn't blink. The spiral opened, and they shot through. The moment they breached, the ship snapped into calm. Stars, real stars. Cold, distant, beautiful. No pursuers. No alarms. Just open space. Sira sagged in her chair, sweat clinging to her brow. Ronan exhaled a long breath, then turned to her slowly. You just flew us through the most dangerous anomaly in the sector, he said, voice soft with awe. Without a map, without help, with one hand. Sira blinked. Then smiled small, tired but real. Guess I'm not defective after all. Ronan grinned. Defective? Nah, your evolution with attitude. Outside, the stars stretched forever uncharted. UNWATCHED. And finally, free. The stars outside the viewport didn't judge. They didn't whisper behind her back or measure her worth by the emptiness of her sleeve. They didn't see her as broken, incomplete, unbonded. They simply were ancient, distant, burning in silence. And for the first time in her life, Sira felt the same. Not lesser, not defective, just present. The rift was far behind now, its chaotic heart lost beyond the glow of the auxiliary drive's fading trail. The scout ship drifted quietly in the vacuum, its engines cooling. Systems flickered, back to life, one by one. Minimal fuel remained, no mapped coordinates, no allies. But they were alive. Ronan was sprawled across the co-pilot's chair, a coolant hose wrapped like a scarf around his neck. Boots kicked up on the dashboard as if they were lounging in. A cafe instead of the aftermath of a galactic escape. Sira leaned against the edge of the console, sipping water from a ration pouch, watching him in half curiosity, half exhaustion. He glanced at her sideways. We should probably figure out where the hell we are. We're somewhere beyond Academy space, she said. The rift ejected us past the outer constellations. Cool, cool, he stretched. Love a good excommunication. Syrah stared ahead again. They won't stop, Ronan sobered. I know. Aurelis Prime won't let this go. I'm not just a runaway experiment now. I'm a threat, too. Their control, proof that I can survive without their system. You did more than survive, he said. You navigated the rift. You did something no one in their perfect little bonded society has ever done. Her eyes met his. And you followed me. Correction, he said, lifting a finger. We followed you. Silence lingered between them, thick, but not heavy. Then he smiled faintly. So, what now? Syrah turned toward the panel, fingers trailing across the nav glass. We need a port. A black market outpost, unregistered. Somewhere we can sell the ship, wipe its trace signature. Somewhere to disappear. I know a few places, Ronan said, sitting up. Ugly planets. Number. Law, bad food. Even worse plumbing. But nobody cares who you are. That's exactly what we need. He nodded, then tapped the console. Coordinates loaded. We'll coast the rest of the way on impulse. They sat in silence for a while, a soft hum of the ship lulling them both into something close to peace. But it was temporary. They both knew that. 3 days later, the scout touched down on a rust-orange world choked with scrap towers and flickering neon signs. The air was thick with engine oil and fried spices. A fringe outpost Raven's Reach, where law came second and credits came. First, they moved fast. Syrah, wrapped in a makeshift cloak to hide her face and sleeve. Ronan, cracking jokes with vendors, slipping bribes to forge new ID markers. Within hours, the ship was sold for scrap, its registry wiped from all known systems. By nightfall, they were ghosts. Syrah no longer existed. Neither did Ronan Walker. They had new names now, new clothes. No one cared who she'd once been, that she couldn't bond, that she was once a test subject in the core of the galaxy's most elite academy. She was no longer the girl who failed every trial. Now she was just Syrah, and that was enough. They found work small jobs, cargo hauling, system diagnostics, low-tier navigation gigs where Ronan pretended to be the expert and Syrah quietly corrected every trajectory. And word began to spread of a pilot who flew without maps, of a girl who read the stars like music, of a human who stood beside her. With no psychic link, just trust. In time, people stopped asking how they survived the rift. They started asking if they could follow. And in the quiet moments after the jobs, after the noise, Syrah would catch Ronan looking at her with that tilted smile, like he'd known something she hadn't from the very start. One night, as they sat atop the roof of their temporary quarters, the polluted sky swirling above them in pink and gold clouds, Syrah asked, "Why did you stay?" He didn't answer right away, just leaned back on his hands and looked up. Then, because everyone else saw a defect, he turned to her. "I saw someone fighting like hell not to disappear." Syrah's throat tightened. "You could have left." "I didn't want to," he said, "and I don't plan to." They sat there in the warm buzz of neon and dust storms and shared silence. And when he reached out, she let him take her hand, not as a bond, not as a scan, not as an experiment. Just a hand, warm, present, chosen, because even without a network, even without a psychic link, they had found something stronger, something that didn't need permission. And somewhere far away deep in the halls of Aurelis Prime, a monitor continued to blink, unread, unanswered, because Syrah was gone, and she was never coming back, not as a project, not as a failure, but as herself, unbroken, free, and no longer alone.